Welcome to the profiling video for Tournament Indicator. At certain stages of the tournament, you're going to be relying on your opponent's tendencies more than anything else. In particular, the start of a tournament. To help you with that, Tournament Indicator has indicators that track your opponents for you during table play. Each indicator can tell a story on its own, but when used together, you can get quite a clear picture of what your opponent normally plays and how he plays it. In addition, it will become rather evident if they have any idea at all what they are doing, or possibly that you are being outplayed by a very experienced tournament player. Sometimes it is actually not easy to distinguish. So let's take a look at Tournament Indicator's profiling features. While Tournament Indicator is monitoring your game, it is tabulating some key indicators on your behalf. Keep in mind that these indicators are the same things you would normally keep track of without software help or at a live tournament table. Tournament Indicator just keeps every detail tabulated and doesn't forget anything. This is useful for anybody who may not be concentrating 100% of the time, players that multi-table, or for leisure players who play while watching TV, for example. Some players don't even play when the tournament starts, opting to wait for 1 or 2 blind levels to pass, then joining in. In that case, you can sit down to a full table of information that Tournament Indicator has tabulated in your absence. Let's get on to the indicators now, and I'll explain each one. Voluntarily putting money into the pot, or VPIP percentage, is the amount of times that a player has voluntarily put money into the pot. This is translated as a percentage. This percentage does not include big blind checking, then folding, but will include filling up the small blind, then folding after the flop. As a matter of point, the higher someone's VPIP percentage is, the looser that player shall be regarded. You won't want to mark this indicator too closely though, until several rounds have passed. This is because position play and a short streak of several good hands can distort the VPIP dramatically. In the early stages of a tournament, I often monitor VPIP closely because I feel that it gives more away about a player's overall tournament philosophy and strategy. I discuss this more in my free video series at mzonereport.com, but suffice here to say, some players like to see a lot of flops when the blinds are low, hoping to hit a monster and double or triple up. On the other end of the spectrum, tight mouse players will wait for a big starting hand and try and get heads up all in with one other player as a huge favorite. This is somewhat parallel to hitting singles or waiting for a long ball to build your stacks. In tournaments, we call this small ball or long ball playing style. Let it be known now that small ball poker is a very skillful game and not necessarily recommended for low buy-in tournaments, especially low buy-in online tournaments. In the Tournament Indicator Stats Grid, VPIP is the first indicator listed, and you can sort it by ascending or descending order for monitoring which of your opponents are loosest or tightest. VPIP directly contributes to a player's overall profile and profile icon, which will be discussed in a few minutes. The next indicator column is pre-flop raising percentage. This indicator shows how often your opponents come into the pot with a raise. This indicator directly contributes to your opponent's profile as well. AF, or aggression factor, is the next indicator displayed, and it is the mathematical equation of raise percentage plus bet percentage divided by call percentage, which simply represents how often your opponent bets or raises compared to just plain calling after the flop. Again, this column can be sorted in ascending or descending order, finding out who might be the most aggressive at your table. Let's look at the next column, which is went to showdown percentage. This simply calculates how many times this player went to the river and turned up cards. It doesn't matter the betting patterns involved to get there, but does show a player's willingness to call down more often than not. If this number is high, you should not be trying to bluff this person, but more so value betting with strong hands. Closely related to the when to showdown percentage is the when to showdown winning percentage. If a player has a high percentage in this category, they are usually playing with good hands. If at the same time the when to showdown winning percentage is low and the when to showdown winning percentage is quite high, you can count on them having a very strong hand, if not the nuts. This player here went to the showdown 7% of the time and won 75% of the time. As opposed to, let's say, this player who went to the showdown 17% of the time and only won 50%. Is involved in more marginal hands. These two indicators together will give you a solid clue as to folding strong hands yourself if there's a lot of action ahead of you and it involves one of these players who has been raising. So for example, if you're holding pocket jacks and two players who have very high when to showdown winning percentage are betting and raising ahead of you, I would consider folding, depending on other situations, of course. All of these indicators contribute to the player's overall profile, which is represented by an icon assigned to that player. The list of profile icons can be found at tournamentindicator.com. However, if you just point your mouse over them, a window will show up reminding you of what that icon actually represents. In this case, neutral, aggressive, solid. Voluntarily put money into the pot percentage is between 24 and 28. And it goes on about the aggression and when to showdown percentage. These are the categories that are used to create this icon. These icons are actually determined mathematically by using the VPIP, the when to showdown percentage, and aggression factor. If you look at the settings panel in the tools menu, you will see that there are default settings here that you are allowed to change. Changing these will hence change icon assignments to your opponents. For a normally paced tournament, it's probably best just to leave these alone. You might want to experiment with them if you're playing turbos or big stack tournaments. I do, however, change one item, and that's assigning an icon to a player. This may come preset at a higher number than 10, but I always change it to 10, because in tournaments you don't often sit with the same player for that long. So any read, even if short, can be a help in a contentious hand. Again, you can always set these back to set default. There are two other columns here, if you noticed, called balance and streak. There's a separate video for these two columns because they indicate a lot more about a player's tilt factor. I'm going to have a short video on that as well.